How my 8th grade math teacher fought corporate greed and negligence with the power of gummy bears. I know that's a wild ride of a title, but I promise it's all true, so buckle up. When I was in 8th grade, I was in the first year of an experimental technology school. I had a class of about 180 8th graders, 12, 14-year-olds, and about 10 teachers. So everybody shared the same math teacher. For our first semester, we used a software called Gauge. It was all right for most classes, but it was absolutely atrocious when it came to math. Nothing worked with math. We were supposed to use the lessons they had, but it just didn't work. Math symbols didn't show up right, and some questions even had the wrong answer marked. My math teacher wasn't allowed to just move to paper, and the company insisted that the problem was that our math teacher was older and just didn't understand technology. They said that if she had a genuine issue to email them. One day I get to class, and there are 7 email addresses written on the board. She told us that we were going to go through our math lesson today and take screenshots of every mistake we found and email them to the company's executives. 1 screenshot's =1 email. 10 emails =, a packet of gummy bears. We had a blast trying to send as many emails as we could. One kid got 10 packets of gummy bears by end of the hour class. By lunch, the principal called my teacher aside and asked for her to stop. She said, "Hell no, my afternoon classes haven't had fun yet." Long story short, our school district got all of its money back from using the software, and the company no longer exists, or they changed their brand out of shame. IDK, I just can't find them anymore. Story 2. Want to limit my food expenses to a limit? I will make sure I hit the limit every day. So, I am a business consultant, and usually during the week we are at client site and get paid for travel, meals, etc. The meal reimbursement policy is quite flexible and doesn't limit what we can claim, like some of the other consulting companies. So we can claim lunch, alcohol, whatever. The policy, however, does lay down a guidance for a daily limit for food expenses, based on the country where you're traveling. I capitalize the word guidance, since that is exactly how it is written in the policy. It is a guidance, not a hard limit. For the UK, where my current project is, the limit is £40 per day, which is mostly okay, but can be a bit low if you're in the center of London, for example. Now I do intermittent fasting. So most of the days I don't have breakfast and lunch, and just have one big meal a day, and have no problems keeping to the £40, usually around £20. On some days, I might go to a fancy restaurant, have a couple of scotches with a steak, and run up a $1.60 bill. But during the course of a 5-day week, my average meals would run about £30 a day, if not less. I've never had a problem claiming these expenses in my 9 years with the firm, but recently a new project manager, Red Bean Counter, came on board, and he sent back a couple of my expense reports for having meal expenses in excess of the £40 for a couple of days, even though the average meal expense over the week was much less than £40. I tried to reason with him, told him that anyway it was a guidance and not a hard limit, and I was keeping the costs down on other days. He refused to budge and said I could only claim £40 a day for food. So guess what? I started doing exactly that. Every day, I made sure I was claiming £40 or thereabouts for food. I started buying meals for the homeless people around the train station to make sure I could make up the £40. So now, where I was claiming less than £150 a week for meals, I now claim £200 and get some good karma for it. Story 3. Keep picking me for a random locker search? Meet my underwear. Many years ago, I worked for an outdoor activities center, Playland, in the retail department. Throughout the park, there were many different shops that we manned, and I absolutely loved working there, despite it being hard work for little pay. One day I had a run-in with a manager who seriously berated me in front of the entire team, along with others from different departments. I was advised by a manager from a different team to make a formal complaint, which I did. Others came out with similar complaints and said manager was advised to find employment elsewhere, but not sacked. Now, unbeknownst to me, I triggered the chain of events that would lead to me leaving the company. Now, before the main story, there's some background info that is relevant to my malicious compliance. There were a few rules in place that were designed to prevent theft, including no more than £10 to be allowed on the shop floor, which was to be checked before your shift. Anything over this must be declared to management and left in your locker, and all staff had to agree to random locker pocket searches. In the 2 years I'd worked here, had never been picked for a random search. There were around several hundred employees, so the odds were incredibly slim. As soon as our disgraced manager left, I suddenly found myself picked at random for a search. This involved turning out my pockets, removing my shoes, socks, and then being escorted to the locker room to empty the contents out. Nothing was found, so I was sent back to the shop floor. The following week, I was again picked at random for a search, which again turned up nothing. Rumors were soon doing the rounds that I had upset my department's remaining management team after instigating the action against my former manager, and they were going to force me out using any means necessary. I realized that I needed to act, so started job hunting and then began my malicious compliance. I started taking a backpack to work filled with £20 and pennies. Every morning I declared the amount in my locker as required, and sure enough, after a couple of days, I was once again selected for my weekly random search. I got paid to watch a security guard and supervisor count 2,000 pennies. As expected, I passed said search and off I went. This happened a second time with now £30 in pennies, and I decided to up my game. At the start of the following week, I patiently awaited my random search with glee, knowing what awaited them. The day soon arrived, and off I was marched to the lockers ready for their treat. I lift out my backpack and pass it to the security guard and supervisor, who dive straight in without any gloves. Oh, how they retched as they discovered what was in there. I had several pairs of my period-soaked pants waiting in there, especially for them. They were gingerly laid on the floor beside my bag as they counted my bag of pennies. The smell from the pants was unreal. They'd been festering in there for days in anticipation. Once again, the search revealed nothing, and off to work I went. After that, I was not picked for another search again. I left after a couple more weeks to a new job, and keeping in touch with some people, I discovered that new rule was introduced that tried dictating what you could and couldn't take to work with you. This soon led to a mass walkout of staff, and after a year, the place shut down due to unrelated matters. Story 4. Boss tells me I'm not a manager, so I stopped doing her job. For background, I work in mental health and substance use services. I've worked in my job for a long time now. My boss is never available for help and hardly on site. Recently, she has got a new manager who is not impressed with her work ethic. But then lockdown happened and he had to shield. She has gone straight back to her old ways. Boss will often ask me to do her work for her to save her coming in, which I have never minded doing up until recently. I had a meeting with my boss after an incident at work where someone tried to assault me. I told my boss I didn't feel supported by her after it had happened, as she wasn't present and didn't manage it well afterwards. In the middle of the meeting, boss says perhaps you want to consider some easier work in a different department? Me. What? Why? Boss. Well, you do take on a lot of extra work that you don't need to. A lot of this work is managers' jobs. Maybe you need to learn to say no to taking on all this work. I asked if there was something wrong with my standard of work, if she had concerns, etc., and she says no. 3 months down the line, 4 the team leave and they get new people in. Boss. Oh, OP, can you induct new starters on their first day? Me. Sorry, boss, that's a manager's job. Boss. Can you complete fire risk assessment? Me. Sorry, boss, that's a manager's job. After a while, she stops asking me things. Then one day she's working from home. I'm pretty sure she has been telling her manager she's on site throughout lockdown, but mostly isn't. Huge incident kicks off with residents, emergency services are called, etc. I call boss and explain to her what happened. Boss. OP, can you please do follow up with commissioning body, staff and residents involved, and write the report. Send it all directly to me, please. Me. Sorry, boss, you will need to come in to manage this. I'm not a manager. That's not my job. Boss. Just this once, please. I refused to manage the incident. Turned out she was visiting a friend who lived at the coast while she was meant to be on site. Someone accidentally let slip to her manager when he called in the incident, and there was no one to manage. He asked me to deal with the incident. I explained I couldn't, and that boss had reported me as taking on too much work to OAOJ. A full investigation has been launched into her conduct and ability to do her job. Manager now talks to me directly and supervises me. He is helping me apply for a promotion. Boss is on leave pending investigation.